Welcome back. You are watching Global Eye, and we're discussing 1 year of the Israel-Hamas war and its ramifications for the world. Let me go across to our guest again. Negar Mortazavi continues to be with us. Negar, what are some of the diplomatic tools or leverage points that Iran has at this juncture right now? What are the options, really, if it wants to control the situation?
Well, it looks like the calculation in Tehran this week was that they are taking too many hits, and they, meaning Iran and its allies, the so-called resistance, the axis of resistance that includes Hezbollah, also Iran's closest ally. After the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran and then the assassination of Hassan Nasrallah in Beirut alongside an Iranian commander, I think the thinking in Tehran was that if they don't hit back, they're going to keep getting hit and possibly harder. So they frame this attack as a warning shot, and they're combining it with messaging, with public and private messaging that, as they've said alongside, they don't want an all-out war, direct war, especially with the United States, but even with Israel, and that they will only escalate if this escalates further. Now, what are the parameters of escalation? What do each side understand and think of the other one as far as their red lines and deterrence versus escalation is not very clear. I mean, the problem is that the different sides of this war don't really have a direct line of communication, of course, and messages have to go through intermediaries. There's no direct line between Iran and the United States, obviously not with Israel, and there have been the work of intermediaries like Qatar, like Egypt, and others in the region who've been trying to help with the diplomacy. So I think one thing that seems to be Iran's message from the beginning and consistently is them trying to avoid an all-out war with the United States and Israel. But I think at this point, they're showing some preparedness to potentially escalate and enter the war if the other side also escalates it to that point. So I think the diplomatic message and the message on the battlefield are trying to sort of be parallel, that they're willing to take an off-ramp. At the same time, they're prepared to escalate depending on the response that's about to come from Israel.
Right. Fatima Khan, how do you think the weapons and the defense mechanisms at the disposal of Iran and its allies in the region stand versus Israel at this juncture? Because Israel, of course, has a very strong defense system and is also receiving a lot of military support from the United States.
Yes, that's correct. But as one of your guests, one of your commenters said, Israel is fighting too many wars right now. And but Iran wasn't engaged in that kind of wars for so long. The important thing is we really do not know how much and in which directions Iran have the capacity to defend itself. But we know that there are these, the government is ready to do whatever it takes to defend not just Iran, its borders, but also those who are considered as Iran's allies.
Right. Ambassador Carmon, what a lot of people would try and understand that there have been negotiations. There was a ceasefire in between, as a result of which some hostages were released. But what really stops Israel from accepting any further ceasefire terms at this juncture? And on what terms do you think Israel will accept a ceasefire and an end to the war?
Well, I think that you mentioned the hostages, which is the #1 priority of the war aims, as it is called in translation from Hebrew. There are 4 or 5 war aims. One of them, the first and foremost, is the hostages. And we are not sure, and I think the Israeli government is not sure really, that there are enough confidence-building measures, as it is called, to be sure that the Hamas is really ready to liberate all the hostages. I want to stress and to remind you that from day one, or more or less, the international community has been stressing the need to free the hostages unconditionally and immediately, and this does not happen. And meanwhile, while in the tunnels of Gaza, there are 101 hostages who live in hell, really hell. I don't see that there is any real will by Hamas. Hamas military force has to be eliminated. This is one thing. The second thing is Hezbollah, which has joined the war with Hamas on the second day, on the 8th of October, displacing with its fire, more than tens of thousands of Israelis who had to leave their place because this is unlivable. I agree perfectly with the analysis that says that we cannot really speculate what will happen and how, but there are a few principles that must be kept. And the first and foremost principle after the issue of the hostages is the fact that the Israeli people has to go back to its homes, to its villages, to its cities, from which they were displaced. And in the last year, and it was also mentioned, in the last year we are fighting a war with 7 different fronts. 7 different fronts.
Right.
An hour ago, we heard that an Iraqi missile killed 2 Israeli soldiers last night. Iraqi, one more of the 7 fronts. So this is really unbearable and unacceptable.
Okay. Right. So clearly very stretched. But let me put that final question to Ambassador Trigunayat. Ambassador Trigunayat, how is India getting impacted? So far, we're not seeing an impact on our economy, but there are fears it will have an impact on inflation. It will have an impact on our exports and our growth overall.
Parikshit, any war anywhere else does have an impact today in the interdependent world. And the Russia-Ukraine war has a major impact on the global south, and India has been flagging it. This particular war, if it happens and escalates and expands, is going to have a direct impact on India. For the simple reason that the maritime lanes, we have seen the Houthi attacks had prevented and made the maritime trade very costlier. And Indian ships are already there, warships, trying to prevent the commercial shipping, help them. On the other hand, you know that we import about 70-80% of our requirements, which has been diversified to Russia. But still, it is the most important for us from the region. And that will be impacted. Most importantly, we have about 9.5 million people in the Gulf countries alone. And their safety and security is of prime importance to us. So if the oil prices, which have already started rising, $70 to $75, $77, that is going to have an impact. And if Israel attacks on the Iranian then the Iran also moves around and responds, then we are looking for an escalation that will have a direct impact on India as well. And that's precisely the reason India has been asking for de-escalation, dialogue, diplomacy, and also a 2-state solution. Because if the Palestinian issue is not resolved, we are going to see it once again.
Right. We've run out of time, but thank you very much, Fatima Khan, Ambassador Trigunayat, Ambassador Carmon, and Negar Mortazavi for joining us on this special on CNBC TV18. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of Global Eye. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to CNBC TV18 for more updates.